So which weapon system is going to be better for us, a stock Glock or an aftermarket Glock? So welcome back to the Muzzle Broke channel, everybody. And today we're chatting a little bit on my thoughts on keeping your Glock pretty bare bones and stock versus kind of really going crazy with the aftermarket components on a Glock. Now, obviously, as you can see off the rip, I kind of have both versions. I have a fairly bare bones stock Glock 17 Gen 3, and on my other hand, I have a completely aftermarket Glock 17 Gen 3. So I know for me, whenever I was first kind of looking at buying a Glock, I kind of was going back and forth between, do I want to buy a Glock stock and change out some of the parts that I really hate, or keep it mainly bare bones, versus really just kind of building a Glock from the ground up with almost 100% aftermarket components. So wanted to kind of make a video today and compare and contrast some of the positives and negatives to going stock Glock versus custom. Starting with our bare bones stock Glock. One of the biggest advantages to keeping your Glock fairly stock is going to be the reliability. In my opinion, one of the biggest draws to a Glock in general is just going to be the reliability of the weapon system. I mean, these weapons have been in the hands of law enforcement and military for years and years, and thousands of rounds have been run through them, and they've kind of earned their reputation as the most reliable handgun on the market. And when you keep your Glock fairly stock, you get the benefit of that incredible Glock reliability. Now, obviously that does come with some drawbacks. Everyone really likes to shit on the Glock sights, but personally, I don't mind these U sights. I have a lot of practice with them, and to me, they're very functional. Another big contention with the stock Glock is going to be the trigger. It's nothing fancy. It's got a little bit of take up, you hit a wall, you got a trigger break, and the reset is, again, nothing fancy. A little bit of reset, and there she goes. Again, I don't think the sights or the trigger are really anything you can't train through. I've shot thousands of rounds through this Glock 17, and I really like the way it shoots, and a lot of that is just because I'm used to it. Now, on this stock Glock 17 Gen 3, you may notice I have done a couple of very small upgrades. The 3 upgrades I've done to this one is just adding the Talon grip to give my hand a little bit more purchase on the weapon. I do have a little Strike Industries mag release on this guy as well, because I am not a super huge fan of the stock Glock mag release, and I did actually add an OEM Glock extended slide release. Now, there is one thing that all 3 of these upgrades have in common, and that is they do not mess with the internals of the gun. I didn't switch the recoil spring assembly, I didn't switch the slide, I didn't switch the trigger, I didn't switch the firing pin, I didn't switch the extractor. I didn't switch any of the internal components for this weapon system. The biggest reason I didn't do any of that is because I wanted to keep the stock Glock reliability. Adding a grip isn't going to mess with the weapon's reliability. Same thing with that slide release and mag release. There are no significantly large internal changes to the weapon system that are going to decrease that reliability. And for me, reliability is going to be the biggest #1 benefit of keeping your Glock fairly stock and bare bones. One thing to note when comparing the stock Glock to an aftermarket Glock is also the recoil pattern and slide weight. Obviously, I've done a couple things to this one, but when I'm shooting them both without a muzzle device, the recoil pattern of the stock Glock slide is actually a lot less snappy than an aftermarket Glock 17. And in my opinion, that's due to the slide weight. I do feel that the stock Glock slide is a little bit heavier, and for some reason, that just makes this muzzle flip a little bit less when you're shooting this weapon system directly compared to an aftermarket Glock slide. Obviously, the downside of keeping your Glock fairly stock is it's not incredibly sexy. I'm not really running an upgraded trigger, I don't have a bunch of pimped out pieces, it's fairly bare bones, and you can find a lot of dudes that are running this. You're kind of trading out some sex appeal for reliability, and as a gun that I carry and a nightstand gun, I'm a-okay with that. Now, let's talk about some positives and negatives to a custom Glock 17 build. And to be honest, we're flipping those two. We're getting an incredible amount of sex appeal, and we are decreasing some reliability. On this custom Glock 17, I am running an aftermarket SCT frame, running an aftermarket slide with an RMR cut. I did switch out the sights, and I have some Trijicon suppressor height night sights on this as well. I'm running a Griffin Armament threaded barrel with a Griffin Armament Easy Lock taper mount, and a Griffin Armament suppressor on this guy as well. I am rocking the Surefire X300 on this, and rocking some goon tape on the frame to give my hand a little bit of a better purchase. Now, I like this gun quite a bit. I think it's a ton of fun, and I really do enjoy shooting it. And I haven't really had too many reliability issues with this. Now, have I had more reliability issues with this gun than the stock Glock? Yeah, absolutely. And to be incredibly honest, I'm not shocked by that. The more variables you add and change to a gun, the harder it is to get to cycle reliably. Now, with something like a Glock 17, shooting, you're not really having a ton of reliability issues. And I'm absolutely going to say there are some very high quality aftermarket parts that you can buy and add to your gun and not experience reliability issues. But of course, those are going to be a little bit more pricey. And as the Muzzle Broke channel, I kind of tried to put this gun together as cheap as I can. I want to say the slide was only $100 or so. I got this threaded barrel for $100. The frame completed was $100. Obviously, the Trijicon sights are a little expensive along with the suppressor and the Surefire. But if we were just counting the base gun, I mean, I think I threw this together for $300 or $400, which is actually going to be a little bit cheaper than the Glock 17 Gen 3 out of the box. With a custom Glock, you can really kind of pimp it out and do whatever you want to it to really kind of give it that sex appeal or vibe that you're looking for. Now, of course, that does come with an increased cost and a questionable amount of reliability issues. I think both options are incredibly reasonable and both have their positives and negatives. Rocking your Glock stock really helps you make sure that you're getting that famous Glock reliability, but you don't really get to play and have as much fun. Personally, I love customizing guns, I love switching parts out, and I like playing around. So I really do appreciate that the aftermarket support for Glocks are absolutely insane, and you can kind of go buck wild with. Obviously, I couldn't really decide between either a stock Glock or a custom Glock, so I do have both, and I absolutely have a blast with both of them. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments, which kind of thought process do you prefer with your Glocks? Rocking stock or customizing the shit out of it? I do really appreciate you guys watching these videos. If you could hit me with a subscribe, I would really appreciate it. And if there's ever any content you want me to chat about, leave me a comment down below and I'll be sure to get to it. Appreciate y'all tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time.